Thank you ever so much for coming. This is the book, Masters of the Matrix, which I wrote last year, or rather I dictated this book from the higher guidance system that communicates with me. It's only a small book, but it does have quite a lot of in-depth concepts in it, and to be honest, when I first brought this information through, I didn't really understand it at all myself. I was writing furiously, passed some of the writing over to Daniel and said, "Do you understand this?" And he was saying, "Pretty much, yeah, I guess," and we were talking about it. And once the book was actually finished, I've read it through myself 6 times, and I still can honestly say that I haven't fully processed the information myself completely. Anyone who's a channel will understand that this is how it works. You tend to get information come through before you've processed it, before you understand it. This is how it works, and it works that way because it's part of your meaningful subjective experience, so that you can actually find out for yourself that this information or this connection is accurate. So for example, if you were communicating with an entity and the entity told you something that hasn't happened yet, and then the next day that event happened, you've got your sort of inner proof. And it kind of happens that way. I've had a lot of clients come to me and say, you know, I'm picking up all this information and I'm writing this down, but I don't know what it means. And I've said to them, yeah, this is the way it works. I gave this book to my mother. She read it and she said, to be honest with you, I don't understand it at all. And I said, well, neither do I, and I wrote it. So I'm going to do my best here. Very brief introduction into what I do. In 1993, I made a conscious, deliberate, focused effort to connect with a spirit guide and move into channeling. I'd read a book about channeling, and in that book there was a meditation that would assist you to connect with the spirit guide. So I committed myself to doing this meditation. I did this meditation regularly, and after a while I made a connection with this entity that told me he was a past life version of myself, and he was a 5th dimensional entity. I could only communicate with him in meditation. I was living with my brother at the time, and he would ask me questions. I would then go into meditation, access the answers, come out of meditation, tell my brother what this entity had said, and continue to work that way until one day my brother asked me a question, and all of a sudden this being, which I called White Spirit, was there with me, and I wasn't in meditation. That was a bit of a surprise, a bit of a shock that it happened that way. I worked with White Spirit for several years, and then on one occasion he told me that I was going through an upgrade because I had learned more, I guess, spiritually, and that he was upgrading to another aspect of himself. So on one level he would be leaving me and another entity would be coming in. But at the same time, this was an upgrade and it was the same entity. This took place over a period of a few days, and then I was with a white-winged being that looked like an angel. This being told me that he was from the 6th dimension, not the 5th dimension. And then after a while, this one-winged angel morphed into a collective group, and there were 9 of these beings with me. So I continued to work with this collective. They had a very unpronounceable name, so I gave them the name the White-Winged Collective Consciousness of 9, because there's 9 of them and they had white wings and they were a collective consciousness. So I've been speaking to them since about 2007, and then in 2008 they told me it was time to go public. I didn't know what that meant. I'd kept my channeling a secret from most people my whole life, and I intended it to stay that way. But they told me, no, it's time to go public, it's time to talk to other people. And I said, what, you mean I need to tell people I talk to you? And basically, yes. Where are these people? And they pointed to the internet. So after a few weeks, I started to release the messages from them in channeled form on YouTube. And it's kind of gone from there, really. I now have, as you've just been told, have several videos on YouTube. I think I'm up to about 430 videos, and there are 42,000 subscribers. So this has been since 2008. When I bring forward the message for a YouTube video. It follows a certain pattern. Sometimes I'll ask a question, or someone else has asked me a question, and then I just make this link, and then I communicate with them, and they sort of dictate to me the answer, and I hear them, I see them, and I feel them. This is all internal. I don't see them with my actual eyes as though they're in the room. I see them in that place that you would call the imagination, but it's quite strong. Sometimes it doesn't happen like that. I don't ask a question. I wake up and there's an energy. I can only explain it as an energy just there, sort of hanging above me like a sort of a cloud. And when I analyse this cloud, I can see like hieroglyphs. I now know this is like the language of light, and what this cloud actually is called a monad. Many people might call this a cosmic download as well, or a cosmic upload, depending on your perspective. There was a day last April when my partner Daniel, who's over in the corner there filming, he'd been reading a lot of material and he was asking me lots of questions, and one day he asked me a series of questions. The first question was, what are past life contracts? And I said, okay, and I started to answer, but before I'd begun to answer that question for him, he kind of started bombarding me with questions. Why do we make them? How do we make them? Are we conscious of making them? Can they be made against our will or without our knowledge? Can we break them? Are they positive or are they negative? How can we tell we have any? And I'm like, hey, hold on a minute. I don't know the answer to half the things you're asking me. It was quite rare for the 9 to come forward actually through me and speak to my partner. That's not really how we worked very often, but funnily enough, it was our 13th anniversary on this day of how long we've been together. And the 9 did say it was part of our connection that this should happen, because the number 13 is very significant and there are cycles, and 13 is a hidden number, so that which is hidden starts to come out, and that's a whole other sort of issue really. So anyway, the 9 came forward and they answered, they responded to these questions for my partner. And they mentioned the masters of the matrix, talking about having this matrix and becoming a master of this matrix. A lot of this information was new to me, and Daniel was really interested in what they were saying. And so about 3 days later, I said to Daniel, I'm going to ask the 9 to bring forward that information that they gave me the other day when you asked all those questions. And I'm going to call this video Masters of the Matrix. It will be another video for YouTube. He said, yeah, fine, because I was always writing, channeling videos for YouTube, so it was nothing different. So I started to bring this through. I said, could you please come through with all that information again that you gave us the other day? And I started to communicate with them, and I started to bring this information through. But this time it was different. This monad was much bigger, or rather it was much more weighty, it was much heavier, there was more intricate design within it. The energy was different when I was bringing this forward, and instead of I can only explain it in a sort of a rhythmic or musical term, when I channel for a video, it sort of comes in with this introduction, goes up into this intense sort of place where I feel I'm in a trance, and then it sort of tapers off. And what actually happened this time is it went into this intro and went up to this place, and it stayed there. And not only did it stay there, but the energy was branching out into different areas. And after a while, I thought, there's no way this is going to be completed for a 10-15 minute video. It was going off into all these tangents. And so I said to Daniel, this isn't a video. This is going to be a book. It's a longer piece. So I'd already got the title Masters of the Matrix, and then I just began to write, just the same as I was doing a video, but it turned out to be a book. So why is this information? Why was it important enough to trigger such a long transmission to be a book as opposed to a YouTube video? Well, the 9 would say all the information is important, but what they were actually giving me here within this information was a model of reality, or a model to explain reality, or really a model to explain consciousness itself. Now, I'm told there are many models. There are many models you can use in order to move forward spiritually and understand who you are and your place in the universe. There's chakra upgrades, and there are so many models out there. So this is just another one. The questions they started with were about past life contracts. So why would a simple question like what is a past life contract link to a model of consciousness? Well, the reason why this links is because they were talking to me about the past life contract is actually something that is a code. It is information that is input into a blueprint. Many of you probably know what a pre-incarnate blueprint is, or a blueprint of reality, or a blueprint of destiny. Prior to us being born, we create a map for ourselves, what we want to experience within incarnation. So within that map, we may have all sorts of experiences, people we might want to meet, karma that we need to work out, experiences for our highest good. Now, I've always looked at this blueprint as a linear path in front of us because it's made prior to our birth, we're then born, and then we walk this path that we've already formed for ourselves. The Nine do call this the path, or they also say that the yellow brick road is a very appropriate metaphor here, the yellow brick road in The Wizard of Oz. The reason why they use the yellow brick road is it's actually a coded trigger. So when they say to all of you, the yellow brick road, you might not know what that means, but your DNA does. Your inner memory, your higher memory knows exactly what it means. So is this path, this yellow brick road, this blueprint of reality, is it the same thing as the Matrix in a multidimensional, non-linear sense? Well, yes it is. If you were to imagine this path in front of you as a linear path that you are walking, so you're walking from A to B, from the beginning and moving forward. What you do is you take that model and you bring it up and you take it around you like a large wheel. You can visualize this. Many people talk about the aura, and it's the same thing really, but instead of being a sort of field of colour, which it is, the visualization that the Nine gave me here is this wheel, this grid, and this grid sort of extends out around us, and it contains the information for our pre-incarnate blueprint. It has within it the information that we need in order to live an incarnate life. This particular matrix and the teachings within this book are very much the law of attraction, I guess, which is the same teaching that you will hear over and over again. That's because it's cosmic law and it's the truth of how things are. But this is very much a sixth dimensional presentation of the law of attraction. So rather than looking at archetypes and communicating with them or visualizing the things you want or seeing your path as a linear journey, you are actually working with this field. You can visualize this as a wheel, a flat wheel around you, a grid, like a mandala, and then you can sort of pull this wheel out so that it becomes a ball, so it's like a big circle. It's actually more like a geometric shape, more like a hexagon or a dodecahedron. But really what it is a torus, a toroidal field that's moving all the time, and it's alive, and each and every one of us have this around us. It's around everything. It's around the planet, and it's around every living thing. When we visualize this matrix as a wheel or a grid, a mandala, a ball or a torus, the visualization itself is a memory trigger, because each and every person knows what it is, because it's actually you. The true you is not this physical body. The true you is consciousness outside of a physical body. So when you visualize this in whichever pattern you use or whichever model you use, it is a DNA trigger to memory. It triggers your memory. It's a very good way of waking up spiritually. It's a living thing, and the other thing it is the DNA. I've spoken here before about the DNA and how scientists only see the first 5 or 10%, and the rest of the DNA they call junk DNA. They can only really look at the genetic information. That junk DNA is a multidimensional consciousness code. And that's what the matrix is. It's just another perspective of the DNA. So talking about this linear blueprint of reality, on a linear level, what we do is we live a lifetime, we've got everything set out in front of us, then when we pass over, when we die, we then go to a place where we're in non-linear consciousness, we're in non-physical consciousness, and we then analyse the life that we've just lived, and then we create a new blueprint for a new incarnation. That's a linear perception. But in truth, the true reality is not linear, which means we don't have to wait until we die in order to remap this blueprint. We can do this at any time we want. And this is very much what is happening now. On this planet, most people have waited until they've left one incarnation to analyse everything and come back into another incarnation. That's the death experience. But there is also a different way of evolving, and that's ascension, and that's what we're going through now. So really, this is about doing everything from here. Within ascension, people say you take your body with you. Well, it's not that you're taking your body anywhere with you. What you're actually doing is you're doing everything from the physical body, from the consciousness. You don't have to go through a death experience. So you can reprogram this blueprint, which is why this teaching is very much the law of attraction. The Nine talk about this matrix being a large computer. They feel that that's a good metaphor to explain this. And that computer can be programmed. And that is what we do. It's this computer, this data bank, this living computer data bank, working away in the background, being unconsciously programmed. These are the people who are not awake spiritually. They don't realise that they've got this giant computer around them, and they don't realise they're programming it. What's actually happening is, whilst they are subconsciously and unconsciously programming this computer, they do have assistance. Because if you look at the non-linear reality, the aspect of you that creates the blueprint would be perceived as the higher self when we're here in physical incarnation. So even the individuals that are asleep and are not awake spiritually, they still have assistance in the creation of this blueprint. And even though they might think their life is particularly not that great, and they're not happy, or they're going through traumatic experiences, really they are having assistance, and that matrix is being programmed for their highest good. The higher council of light, it's a good way of visualizing the non-linear reality in a linear way. And the reason why that's important is because our third dimensional brain is an interface for decoding reality. And the brain tries to decode reality in a third dimensional sense, in a linear sense that makes sense to us. So it's a good way to say there is a higher council of light designing our blueprint for us as we walk through this life. But really, that higher council of light is us. It's just that we don't see it that way, especially if we haven't woken up spiritually. Once we wake up spiritually, we begin to realise that we are one with this higher dimensional aspect of ourselves. So looking at the journey that we go through, we have what's called an inception point. The inception point is different to birth. The inception point is the point where we are created as this matrix. And the matrix is set with all these codes, and we begin a journey of several incarnations with the same matrix. This matrix is actually our soul. That's another word for it. So we begin this journey, and we start to accumulate experience. We start to make sense of our incarnations. When that happens, we retain memory so that when we go into another incarnation, we might have a different physical body, but with the same matrix. So an inception point is the birth of the matrix, or the birth of the soul. And that's where we begin to create these contracts. So what triggers the individualization of memory within the matrix? Because obviously some souls can be created, come into an incarnation, and when they finish that incarnation, there hasn't been anything to trigger memory, therefore they will make a new matrix. Basically, they are recycled, if you like. They don't begin a path of individualization. What triggers the path of individualization of memory is reaching these contracts. So when I talk about a past life contract, really this is an agreement that is made, either with another soul in another incarnation, or it can be an agreement made between the physical self and the higher self, or it can be an agreement made between two aspects of higher self aspects, as in two members of the Council of Light. Ultimately, what this is, on a sixth dimensional level, is geometry. It's geometry meeting geometry. It's an aspect of self connecting with an aspect of self, creating a code. These past life contracts are coordinates. When we come into a point where we connect with that past life contract, that coordinate, the Nine call this a node point. This is where, for example, say you have several different timelines, and in that timeline you've got a blue jumper on, a red jumper on, and a green jumper and a yellow jumper. These are all experiences that you may have within your free will, written into the blueprint. But say there's another day where you're wearing a white jumper and you've got a white jumper on in all these timelines. That is a node point because that particular experience is in all the timelines, meaning it's destiny. This is programmed into this blueprint as well. When we start to experience destiny, and we'll know when we're experiencing destiny because we will feel like we've had a shift, we'll feel like we've had an upgrade, we will, once we're spiritually aware, we will know when we're having these node point experiences. Once we start to experience these node points, then the soul begins to individualize, the matrix begins to individualize. So the node points trigger the individualization of memory within the matrix, meaning when you leave the body and then come back into another incarnation, you will retain memory from that incarnation. So you have experiences that will help you in your next life. Sometimes you might find that you pick up a guitar and start to play and think, I felt like I've done this before. Well, that's probably because you have. So there are all sorts of memories that are very useful to us within our next life. Synchronicity is the way the matrix communicates with us, if you like. And we can use synchronicity to communicate with the matrix. When we become spiritually aware, we build what's called a meaningful subjective experience. We start to experience coincidences. And this is the matrix sort of guiding us, if you like, onto this pre-incarnate blueprinted path. But the path is a linear expression of this. And to actually see this as a matrix around us changes the visualization from a linear one into a now moment, also known as the 0 point. There's more to this story, which is, in the book. So going back many thousands of years, there were and are this large group of individuals who they learned how, or were given the information how, to hijack the matrix of other individuals. The 9 call these the programmers. They found a way to program the computers of others. Why did they do this? Well, when we come into existence, we experience free will. And the only way we can experience free will is by experiencing contrast. And that gives us choice. We can't experience free will without choice, so we need contrast in order to give us that choice. So there are two predominant vibrations here. One is negative, one is positive. Many may know this as service to self and service to others. So some souls have incarnated within a service to others positive vibration, or certainly are on the path to experiencing that, and vice versa. Other souls have come here to experience a negative and a service to self vibration. So the service to self energy, I don't want to go too far into that because I know it's not particularly a positive thing to talk about. However, the information in the book came through to teach you how to become immune from the hijacking of these individuals. That's really the main teaching here. Because it's still going on. It's not something that happened thousands of years ago and it's all stopped. It's still going on. And we are very much, right now in the year 2017, we're right in the crux of this changing, which is why this material has, come out now. So this service to self group, they hijack the matrix of others in order to gain power. In order for them to have power, they need to experience the contrast of powerlessness. So someone who has their matrix hijacked is powerless, giving them power. In a way, it's like a consuming. They consume that energy. And I'm talking about individuals here that are physically incarnated and also outside of physical incarnation and within other planetary systems as well. So there's a large service to self network and a large service to others network. How they hijack this matrix to the conscious individuals who are here on Earth is through our emotions, because the way we program this large computer, the coordinates we give to this large computer, are our emotions. There's a certain way we do this. Not every emotion is going to be programmed into the computer. It depends how we're experiencing that emotion. So these service to self groups, they couldn't actually hijack the matrix itself. There's no way that they can actually steal your soul, if you like. And if you look into many ancient texts, they'll talk about selling your soul to the devil or stealing your soul or giving your soul away. These are all truthful metaphors, but they can't actually touch your matrix. It's impossible. It's a sovereign aspect that can't be hacked or hijacked. But what they can do is hijack the emotions of the individual, which then influences the matrix. It influences the coordinates that are put into the matrix. And that's how they have done this, across this planet with advertising and food and, the entire system really set up in our society. So the question I asked is, are aware individuals immune to this hijacking? Well, pretty much yes. And how? Once an aware individual wakes up spiritually, they then start to think differently. They think in a more multidimensional sense. They start to program the matrix with different codes. For example, if someone were to not be aware and they were very fearful and very angry, and they allowed this anger to fester within them for a long time, then that would become a coordinate within the matrix. What actually happens there, because the matrix is a sixth dimensional aspect of self, it creates a geometric pattern that is a match to that emotion, and then it falls down through the dimensions and sets within the third dimension. So someone who's constantly angry all the time sets the coordinate of anger, and that will then set as a vibrational match within their reality, and they will experience people or events that match anger. Now, somebody who's aware, who also feels anger, will process this very differently, because what they do when they're aware, regardless of which spiritual model that they follow, or whether they've got their own channel, their guidance will be teaching them, or whether they're meditating, however this is done, they will think, well, why am I angry? What's the reason why I'm angry? And they start to process this, and they start to integrate this. So what is programmed into the matrix is integration of anger and processing of anger, not anger itself, which changes the reality for the aware individual. What the aware individual is doing is moving into what the 9 call the 0 point, which is the central point of this matrix. Now, the 0 point is the place where, if you're looking on a linear sense, you have to be aware of these past life contracts, and you know that you've been born with these contracts, these coordinates in place, and you're aware of that. It's a linear awareness. When you move into the 0 point, there is no past, present, or future. You are existing multidimensionally, therefore there are no contracts. There cannot be contracts, for contracts is a linear expression. So once you're aware that there are past life contracts and you're aware that there are no contracts, that's when you've accessed the 0 point. And that gives you a firewall, a very large and very efficient firewall which prevents your matrix from being hacked. And I'd like to quote from the book here about that. This is written in the book. The 9 said, when one moves into the 0 point, one can then play within the fields of distortion, if you will, and move out of the central core of the fractal into the outer rings and change the matrix. This is the place where you break contracts and create new ones. This is the place where you remove smaller geometries from the larger wheel and add new sections of geometry to the overall dodecahedron presentation. So what you are doing here when you take the 0 point, the now moment, is you are then reprogramming this matrix. You are recreating this blueprint. And you do this by taking the awareness that there are no contracts. So I know that that sounds a bit much to get your head round, but the book does explain it probably better than me. Do they use contracts to control your matrix beyond this life? And that's absolutely the case. So the service to self groups, they have learned, or they were given the technology, or however it occurred. They don't just influence all in this life. They can use this information to control our entire incarnational line. The 9 call this false contracts by creating these node points that are not real destiny that we created. It's something that they have influenced in a way. I guess it's like mind control, mass mind control, and it's going on right across the planet. But what they actually do is, once they have managed to influence an individual enough so that they're putting coordinates into the matrix of lower vibration, so this will be fear-based vibration, these individuals, when they leave their body, it's not a case of, oh, they've left their body and so they just fly off into the higher dimensions, into a state of bliss, and they're in heaven. Yes, that does happen, but that's from a different perspective. On a linear perspective, when you leave your body, you move through the dimensions and you experience the next dimension. So what they are able to do is hack the matrix. Now the matrix moves into multidimensional space. So really a good way of explaining this is to say that when you leave your body, you move into the 4th dimension. What they've done is set like nets or traps within the 4th dimension. So you are caught in these nets or traps, and then you are sprung back into incarnation against your will. You might not want to incarnate here again, but you don't have any choice if you haven't gone beyond the 4th dimension, because you aren't able to access the 0 point and create the blueprint. You're still in a linear experience. Your soul is still in a linear experience, even though you no longer have a physical body. So you're caught in these traps and bounced straight back, which is why you might find some people who teach spiritually will talk about this being a prison planet or that sort of thing. But when you take the 0 point, when you are able to do all these things that I'm saying, become aware of multidimensionality, move into a spiritual journey, and you start to process these emotions. So the coordinates you give the matrix are one of integration and processing, not the emotion itself. And then you start to work with higher love-based emotions, what actually happens to you is when you leave your body, you completely bypass the fourth dimension. You sail right over these nets or traps. They're simply not there in your reality, and you do move straight into a higher dimensional space. So the 9 talk about 3 aspects that are steps to achieving mastery of the matrix. And so the 3 steps that they talk about are how to deal with programming the matrix through your emotions. And the 3 aspects they speak about are awareness, expansion, and emotion. Those 3 things, awareness, expansion, and emotion, create a higher patterning within that matrix. It keys in higher coordinates. Awareness, like the example, I feel anger. Why do I feel anger? Expansion, this is you taking a spiritual journey and waking up and connecting with your guides and doing all the things you do when you're spiritually aware and being able to work with your emotion. This is not to say that you don't ever feel fear or you don't ever feel jealousy or you don't ever feel anger or irritation. This is not the case. This is normal to feel these emotions. They're teaching tools. But when you feel these emotions, think, okay, the first thing to do is name the emotion. So if it's irritation, I feel irritated. You can even give that emotion a persona. You can create a archetype for the emotion irritation. You could actually imagine a little being that is irritation and you can call it irritation and you can talk to it and say, why are you here? Why am I feeling, this irritation? These are the ways to analyze these negative emotions. If you aren't aware of this and you just feel irritation and there is no awareness, there is no learning, which is why the emotion's there in the first place, then you will set these codes into the matrix and create a match within your reality that is a match to irritation. So, why are these contracts made in the first place? I mean, I have already talked about the fact that they are coordinates, geometries that are part of your pre-incarnate blueprint, but why? Why are they made in the first place? So I'd just like to make a quote from the book here. Why are contracts made? And the 9 said, this happens automatically. It's the merging of energy with energy to create the incarnate blueprint so you may experience that which you need to experience for your highest good. And what are these contracts? I spoke about these node points within the incarnate blueprint, which are pre-made agreements for destiny and fate, also known as convergence points. They're where all the timelines converge together. So rather than looking at timelines in linear sense as tracks, they all converge together like a circle or spiral. And these node points, these destined agreements will be in all timelines as the timelines converge together to create destiny. The 9 also call them graduation points because when you get to these points, you graduate, you have an upgrade, you move to another level of your awareness, and spiritually aware individuals will often feel this. They will say, I've had an upgrade, I've had a shift. Or save points. The reason why they're called save points is because the minute you get to a node point, this is when you begin to accumulate memory for the matrix, memory for the soul that's retained. So the soul begins to individualize, which is the aim for all souls. All souls are individualizing. Why? Because they are a replica of Source. Source is an individual entity. Source gave out a frequency that was a wish to express itself and to experience all and everything. So when you individualize, you are passing information back to Source because you are Source, and you become a source point in your own right. So you're moving away from Source, you individualize and you become Source. Sort of another source, but you're all one. All experience and information gathered at that save point is stored, and the matrix, soul, begins its journey of individualization. So you're guided, you're led to these node points of destiny by these archetypes from the grid, and these are your guides. So if you're seeing angels or ascended masters or fairies, or you have a sense of a being or a sense of a collective with you, or you're experiencing synchronicity, this is the matrix guiding you on your journey. And as I've said, you don't have to follow this journey that's been laid out for you. You can actually recreate a new journey for yourself. As you awaken, you experience more and more node points. You begin to live your reality in tune with them. So this is happening now for a great many spiritually aware people. They are experiencing node points all the time. So synchronicity is occurring all the time, faster and faster, to the point where your entire reality becomes one big node point, and that is ascension. It's where you are living your destiny. So when that happens, it's not a case of, oh, well, this has been planned for me and I need to experience it. You're in the 0 point. And you don't need to move into the 0 point and think, well, I'm going to change my matrix now and I'm going to shift all this geometry. You simply live, and it all happens simultaneously. Many would know this as living in alignment to truth, or following the North Star, the inner North Star. And there are ways to discover what that alignment is and how to feel that alignment. And many teachers out there are teaching this information now. So this is happening en masse, as I'm sure everyone in the room knows. This is the whole sort of 2012 energy. This is happening en masse now, right across this planet. So when your timelines converge and you live your destiny, you could say you have ascended at this point. However, ascension is a never-ending journey, and there are always steps to the next part of the journey. So it's not really a case of, I've ascended, I can stop now, that's it, I've done it. It's not really like that, it continues. What the 9 would use here as a metaphor is ascension is simply walking an incline rather than a flat path. So instead of walking a flat path in front of you, you're going up all the time on an incline, but truthfully you're actually moving up through a spiral stairway, and that is the DNA. Node points, these destiny points, they can be small or large. They don't really have size, but it's really how much learning and expansion you experience from them. So a small node point might be you read a book and it inspires you. A large node point might be that you gather together with a large group of people and have a sacred ritual on perhaps the solstice or something. So it's really about the energy contained within that experience. Or, for example, a small node point might mean you meet somebody. You spend an hour talking to them and you glean some amazing information from that person. A large node point would be you meet your partner and you marry this person and you live with them and have a spiritual journey with them, and they're your twin flame. People talk about twin flames. Well, meeting your twin flame is a node point. And that's a whole other subject. I'd also like to quote another piece from the book. You cannot exist within the 3rd dimension without the node points, for they are the very fabric of reality. So you can't exist without having these contracts, this destiny. Yet remember the unified perspective within the 0 point, when one sits upon a node point. At this point there are no contracts, and at that point you cease to exist. For you become oneness, unified with Source. So that's kind of what happens. You can't have an existence without the node points, but when you realise there are no node points, you cease to exist as a 3rd dimensional physical being. You become multidimensional. That's the journey that all the spiritually aware individuals across the planet right now, known to many as star seeds, that this is the journey that they are on right now. So this begins integration, as I've spoken about. You cannot experience the 3rd dimension and all the growth it has to offer without the node points, yet you cannot move into enlightenment unless you experience the 0 point and move beyond the node points. So again, a little bit of a paradox there. You have to, you can't experience the 3rd dimension without node points, but you can't move into enlightenment and ascension unless you experience the 0 point, which is no node points. It is said you are not humans having a spiritual experience. You are spirits having a human experience, but the 9 said here, in truth, both these statements are correct. You are humans having a spiritual experience, and you are spirits having a human experience. They also say that having a healthy matrix is akin to wearing the badge of sovereignty. So what is a healthy matrix? And that is a matrix whereby the individual has started to become integrated, they're working with trauma, there isn't anything buried there. If there is anything buried, they are either aware of it or they're constantly looking to be aware of it. They are living within a higher emotional state. Now, the 9 speak about this higher emotional state. They talk about this high emotional state being a frequency that the matrix aligns with once you've been through emotional integration. Emotional integration is acknowledgement of the emotion you're feeling, gratitude for the emotion you're feeling, analysis of the emotion, and integration of that emotion. Then you set those codes within your matrix, and that creates a healthy matrix that cannot be hijacked by anybody. You become sovereign, which is why you wear the badge of sovereignty. So what frequency does your matrix align with when you've been through this emotional integration? And it's not something you do once. You do this again and again. But some people, after doing this, can do this very quickly. You know, they might feel a negative emotion and, you know, acknowledge it, gratitude for it being there, analyse it quickly, integrate it, and it's done. And within an hour, they've whizzed that through their matrix. I mean, you know, people may take a day or a week. There is no set time period. You know, there's no judgment on how long it takes you to integrate your emotion. The minute you start integrating it, you're already sending codes to your matrix of integration, whether it takes you a year or an hour. But the frequency your matrix begins to align with when you've been through emotional integration is no longer fear or fear-based emotion. It is a higher frequency, and the 9 call this love light and light love. They're two different but matching frequencies. Now what you're doing here is you're raising above polarity. In the 3rd dimension we experience polarity as being negative, positive, fear, love. When we raise our vibrational state, our polarity is love light and light love. They are both higher vibrational polarities. So I'd like to talk about love light and light love. Lost my notes here. So love light is the emotion of bliss combined with the infinite intelligence of the universe. Light love are the frequency codes of awareness and intelligence that combine with the emotions of bliss. These two frequencies, love light and light love, combine together when you experience them both to produce what the 9 call bliss-charged love. And light love and love light are created by emotional integration. Now, bliss-charged love is very important because what bliss-charged love is a frequency. It's known to many as the golden frequency, the golden mean, the golden equation, the Fibonacci sequence. So this is the code of bliss. When you feel this, or when you're able to work with this, and it doesn't mean you have to walk around in a state of bliss and love light and light love all day, but the integration of emotion is leading you to that state, and you're working with it, whether it's an intermittent, period, or whether you're experiencing this a lot. When you experience this, you create a code, a frequency within your matrix field. And remember, the matrix is the DNA. So what you do here is you change the DNA, you change the structure of the DNA, and you change it from a double helix carbon-based structure to a triple helix and beyond crystalline-based structure. You actually change your DNA from a physical structure into pure light. And this is what's happening with everyone across the planet. This is part of the ascension. You'll hear people talking about the light body and the rainbow body of light. You will also hear individuals talking about the language of light. So the language of light is a universal cosmic language that every single person knows. They know it intrinsically at the very deepest core of their being, even if they don't know it in their mind. And you use symbols to communicate with the language of light. So the 9 in this book, there's a teaching in the book that teaches you to draw love light and light love into your emotional state so that you can set these codes of light love and love light into the matrix through using the language of light, simply through visualization. One visualization is the pink rose, which is love light. The reason why it's a pink rose is that love light is a masculine energy. Love light gives power to the knowing. So this is a masculine force, it is momentum, it's power. You will hear these teachings all over. All spiritual teachers will be getting this information in different ways. They will be presenting different metaphors. If you look at ancient religious texts, this information is there. I'm sure it's in the Bible in some form. I haven't read it, but I'm told that it is. Light love, the visualization for light love is the Holy Grail. However you visualize it, it doesn't matter as long as you know it means the Holy Grail. So if you're visualizing a golden chalice, that's great. If you're visualizing the Holy Grail as a blade of grass, that's fine, as long as you know it's the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail gives knowing to the power of love. It's receptive and it's feminine. So it's the divine feminine, it's the goddess, it's the nurturing force, it's the inspiration. When you hold these two visualizations together, the pink rose and the Holy Grail, and you move through emotional integration, this sets the patterns for the healthy, organic, source-aligned matrix, and thus sovereignty. So what the 9 would say here about using the language of light in this way, so if you don't understand all of this in a technical sense, you can simply work with the visualizations. You can say, I don't want to know about the DNA and all these matrix and 6th dimension, it's all above my head, but yeah, I'll work with a pink rose and I'll work with this Holy Grail. You can use the visualization, you're using the language of light, and the DNA understands what you're doing. And what the 9 would say here is the frequency is understood by the DNA matrix. The subconscious mind recognizes the symbol as it's passed from the left hemisphere of the brain to the right hemisphere of the brain. So when you integrate and balance love, light and light love through the language of light, you create the bliss-charged love frequency within the matrix. This is how you enter the 0-point field. The 0-point field is a unified field of consciousness. The matrix is consciousness itself. Can consciousness be measured? Does it have a geometry? Can you communicate with it? Well, yes, indeed you can. It wants to be communicated with, and it is the very essence of all that is you, for you are consciousness. What is the matrix? Who are the masters? I, Magenta Pixie, am so very pleased to present my first book, channeled from my guidance system that I refer to as the White-Winged Collective Consciousness of 9. Discover the true story of our origins as an energy system, how we lost the original template for our destiny, and how we are now in the process of remembering those lost codes. Learn how humanity may reclaim the sovereignty which is rightfully ours, bringing us back into wholeness, integration, and full understanding of who we are, what we are, why we are here, and what we are here to do. Spirituality, metaphysics, and science merge as the sacred geometry, known as the language of light, is downloaded and decoded. The realization and activation of these ancient codes for a new dawn of man is an alchemical process available to us all. Now is the time that collectively we move forward into a fully conscious ascension and embrace the new archetype of Master of the Matrix.